today I'm gonna be animating one of my oldest animations, which was made back in 2020, and as you can see, it looks terrible. I mean, look at this. But we all have to start somewhere, right? So the big question is, how can we improve this? Well, the most important thing is to plan out what we're going to change. So here's a breakdown of everything that went wrong in this animation. First, the lines are unclear. You can clearly see that I wasn't confident with my strokes back then, and that made everything look stiff and unnatural. It's like the lines are fighting against the flow of the animation instead of supporting it. This time we're going to be much more precise and confident with the lines, which is going to give it a smoother and cleaner look. Next up, the background looks like it was made in 2 minutes. I mean, what even is this? It's flat, it's boring, and it adds absolutely nothing to the scene. This time we're going to make an actual background using Procreate, and these paintings will fit the animation style and help bring the scene to life. Then there's the anatomy of the character. I mean, it looks like a mess. The poses are stiff and the proportions are way off. So here's a cool trick I learned. If you can't see the problems with your drawing, just flip them. Then you'll notice all the mistakes and you can easily fix them. Finally, there's no compositing in this animation. Everything just looks flat and lifeless, which is totally the opposite of what we want. So we're going to add some depth, some shadow, and maybe even some cool effects. This animation has 30 cuts, so it's going to take a lot of time. But if you enjoy the work I do, please consider subscribing, following me on Instagram, and checking out my favorite if you want to support me. Without further ado, let's get started. So here are all the cuts that we're going to be remaking. The first cut shows the main character's foot, then the camera pans up to his face. But the movements is so stiff, so we'll make his head move and add a little bit of fluidity. By the way, we're going to call him Taiki. The second cut will follow a similar pattern, but this time we'll see the villain, and we'll name him Kokuto. Next, we have 2 quick cuts of a sword being pulled from its scabbard. Then Taiki swings his sword, and we'll use a specific shape to create the speed effect to make the motion feel faster and smoother. In the next cut, we need to fix the zoom effect and make it more dynamic and interesting. After that, we'll add more anticipation and speed to make the cut feel more impactful. Oh, this one needs some serious improvement. The anatomy of Taiki's body is off, and the perspective of the ground feels wrong. Oh, this one is pretty cool. We just need to add some light effect and it will look way better. These next cuts are a bit too exaggerated, so we'll simplify them and just keep the mouth cut for clarity. The blood in this shot lacked details, so we'll be adding some more depth into it. Oh, now this has to be the worst cut I ever made. The jawline looks terrible, so we'll have to adjust the anatomy. This one also lacks movement, so we'll add more action to make it feel alive. This shot is pretty cool, except for this one frame, but the explosion needs some more work to make it look more dynamic. The fog in this cut would look better if it was made in Procreate. This eye shot needs more details to give it more intensity, and on this cut the smoke just looks too simple, like it's just lacking details. Oh, this shot is actually fantastic. It might be the best cut in the entire fight sequence, so we'll just have to fix the drawings, but we'll keep the same energy. Lastly, the rest of these cuts are too rushed. They don't have any solid foundations, so we'll be fixing them to make it more consistent. In order to do my animations, I'm going to need an iPad and an Apple Pencil, and the applications I'm going to use are flipaclip, which lets you animate, and Procreate, which is perfect for backgrounds and smoke effects. In order to make the animation, we're going to create a new project and choose the canvas size to 180p, and it's going to be in 24 fps. The backgrounds are going to be in 24 fps, and most of the time the characters are going to be in 12 fps. So now we're going to start off with the first cut. Now there are a lot of things that don't work with this cut. The first problem is that we have to fix the anatomy of the foot. It just looks too big, and also the lines are unclean and they are too big, so I will use the pixel brush instead of using the normal brush, and I will need to have clean lines, and we're also going to add more frames. So we're going to start by animating the foot touching the ground, and then I will animate the beginning of the animation, since the beginning is not as important. Then I will also create a color grid for my characters. After that, I will use these colors to fill every part of the animation, and for now we won't have the shadows. I have a way more efficient way to do it, but more on that later. Also, to make sure the animation movement is smoother, I will use the select tool to place the foot correctly. So now the most interesting part of this cut will be the shadows and how we will make the shadows. So basically we will duplicate this layer of the foot, and then the blending mode of this layer will be the multiply mode, which is gonna make everything darker. Then we will use an alpha lock to fill everything with a dark shade of blue. Then we will delete the parts where there will be light, by adding white. For the compositing, I also copied the layer, so I basically did the same thing, and I used a white airbrush to erase these parts and give them a bright effect, and as you can see, the difference is shocking. For the pan up, I want it to be smoother because in the original animation it doesn't look that good, so this is why I chose to make it in 24 fps. So in order to do the pan up, I drew the upper part of the body. Also in this part of the body, I made sure that the hands are closed to show that the character is angry. For this part, since it's gonna be pretty quick, I can use pretty simple shading. Then I connected the upper body to the lower body and zoomed where his face will be. In order to emphasize the fact that he is angry, I will tilt the head a little bit and lower his eyebrows. Then for the shadows, I made sure they fit with this layer. Now, as you can see, we have a little problem here. The head doesn't reach the end of the frame, but it's pretty easy to fix. We just have to draw the missing part and add it on every frame. Now we will create the background in Procreate by using the cloud brush, and we will also add the rock textures and the perspective effect, and we are done with the first cut. As you can see, it looks way smoother, and we can move to the next one. For the second cut, I will put the ears higher and fix his jaw. So I'll also add a lot of movement, and I will animate his smile, which will show how confident and evil he is. Also, I'd like to explain that the compositing is done using the color dodge blend mode, the airbrush, and a black background. After creating the movement and adding the compositing, we can add a red light to make him look even more devious. The third cut is a still frame that shows the two characters. We can see what they look like, and in this shot the background will be a little bit more detailed because we will see both of them. The fourth and the fifth cut are pretty easy to make, and this time we'll use the ruler tool. So basically it's the cut where they pull their swords, and as you can see, the swords are not straight in the original. So this time we're gonna use the ruler tool to make sure the lines are straight. This is gonna make everything look better and cleaner. We will also add some smears to create this speed effect. Also, a very important part in the compositing stage is to add this light effect, which is gonna create this reflecting light on the blades. All the effects we've added in the fourth cut will be the same for the fifth cut. For the sixth cut, I'm gonna change it up a little bit to make it more interesting. This time I'm going to create a perspective effect. The goal of this cut is to make sure the character looks like he is concentrated, and I will add a lot of frames before that will indicate that he is swinging his sword. We'll also use this shape to show the speed of the sword, and we'll make a blurry background in Procreate, add it to flipaclip, and we'll use the perspective tool to create this angle in the background. And in the compositing, I'm gonna add a lot of particle effects, which is gonna add a lot of realism. Then there will be a transition between the sixth and the seventh cut with a zoom effect. Basically, I will merge two drawings by lowering the opacity of the first one. Also, if you want to improve the breathing animation, we need cleaner lines, more details, and we need to put a little bit of a light effect in the mouth so the viewer will be looking here. For the smoke, we'll create this effect by using the color dodge and the select tool, which is going to be way better than the first one. Now for the 8th cut, there is a very important notion that I want to talk about, and it's the timing. So what we want to do basically, in the beginning of the cut, we want to make sure that it's animated on trees, which means there is 3 frames in a 24 fps animation, and then when it starts to get close to exploding, it needs to be on 2, and when it explodes with the smears effect and the speed effect, it needs to be on 1. So basically when it's on 1s, it's in 24 fps, when it's on 2s, it's in 12 fps, and when it's in 3s, it's in 8 fps, and all of this is going to create this speed effect, which will look very good in the end. So as I said, we'll have to add a lot of smears to make this speed effect. We'll also add shaking effect by moving the background a little bit, and then we'll put a layer of impact behind him, which will be made with the airbrush, and the smoke will be made with a low opacity and with the compositing, which will make everything look very bright. Now the next cut is by far the hardest to pull off. We'll create a 3D effect basically in this cut. So we have to move the background, and then we have to use the perspective tool, which is going to create this 3D effect, and we have to make sure it is stable, which is why it's very hard to make. Then we can make the background in Procreate, which is going to be mountains and clouds, and as you can see, he doesn't have any hair, but don't worry, we'll add it later on another layer. We need to animate the cloud on the layer underneath. So in order to make this animation, I used a lot of layers, and then I will add the hair, which will be animated, and then I will combine all of the layers, which will make one character animated, and then I will move it according to the background and the camera movement. After all of this, I can proudly say that this is one of the best cuts, but also the hardest to make. It took me like 3 hours to make, but I think it looks pretty good. The 10th cut, on the other hand, is one of the easiest to make. You just make a sword slash like this, and then you add a still frame that will move. So just like in the first cut, we'll draw the upper body first, and then I'll draw the lower body and combine them. Then I'm gonna add the shadows. Then for the compositing, I will create a lens flare effect, and we are done. The next cut will also be a still frame, but I will add a shake effect, which will look a little bit better. Now the difficult part for me was to make the pose right. As you can see in this drawing, the villain, Kokuto, looks better because you can see that he isn't even trying. Then for the compositing stage, instead of putting some blue light like I usually do, we'll add some orange light and create some particles, create a clashing of the swords. In the next cut, we'll draw his mouth in this shape, and that will emphasize Kokuto's anger. And we will also create the same tilting movement like we did on the first cut. After that, we'll add thicker lines to emphasize the anger. This time I will use a thicker brush to animate the speed effect, and it will be in 24 fps. Also the blood will be smoother and it will be more detailed. And I think when it's more smooth, it has a bigger impact. We can also add a white frame to create some impact and explosion effect. On this cut, the head will move a little bit and the hair will be animated separately. We will also see that the character has a small pupil, which will show how shocked he is, and he'll spit some blood, and again the blood will be more detailed. The next cut is also very hard. It took me 2 hours because it's a slow motion cut, so we'll also use the same timing effect. So this time Taiki will be animated in 4 and the blood will be animated in 2, so there will be the use of in-betweening, which will make everything smoother. We also want to make sure it looks like Taki is falling towards the camera because the impact is too strong. And also for the blood, I'll add a lot of drops to add more realism. Then we'll add Kokuto flashing in the background. In order to make the blood a little bit transparent, we'll put it in multiply, and then we can add the compositing and we're done. For this specific cut, I really want to redraw this weird frame because I think it adds a comedic effect. So in order to draw it, we need to keep the simple design. Then we'll add a lot of smears to sell the impact. Then I'll draw an explosion, and I will use the same technique as I did from the fire effect animation video, so you can go check that out if you're interested. And after that, I'll add Utapon cubes, which were invented by Nakamura, one of the best animators of all time. Basically, these cubes will add a lot of dynamism and it will make my animation look more aesthetic. In the compositing stage, you'll add a red light and the explosion to create this fire effect, and we'll also add some debris, which will be blurry. Also, the debris will be made with the airbrush. For the next cut, it will be a still frame, so it will be pretty easy. So we're just gonna make a hole in the background. I will draw Kokuto looking at the mess he created, and we'll add 2 layers of smoke, which will make the smoke look better. For if you add the 1 layer, it looks like smoke is crawling, but adding 2 layers make it look animated. And also add some red compositing in the beginning, which will show the end of the explosion. For this cut, we're also going to add 2 layers of smoke. It will be closer, and we'll add the silhouette of Taiki, which will be made by using this wavy effect, and we'll make it very low opacity. Now this cut is pretty easy. We'll see a shot of Kokuto's eyes. We'll use thick lines to convey the emotion of shock, and I'll draw 2 frames of the pupil, which will change to show the emotions. Then the only problem with this cut is the anatomy and the drawings of the smoke, so we'll fix that. And in order to get to the next cut, we'll use a transition effect, which was used in the first animation. But this time, since the smoke is low opacity, we want to hide the effect. We need to make sure the compositing is brighter, which will hide the transition and make it look seamless. I think this cut is very cool, but we need to fix 2 or 3 things. The first thing we're gonna fix is the anatomy of the hand, and also this time I'll animate the bottle and the liquid inside it as it rotates. After that, in the compositing stage, I'll add a reflection light. In this one, I will also animate the bottle by making the potion move inside it, and I will animate the hand through the glass using the same wavy effect. This one is one of the most interesting cuts, since we'll see Kokuto rushing towards Taiki. Again, I will draw some small pupil to indicate his anger. The smear will show the impact, and speaking of impact, I will add some impact frames to create an explosive effect. In order to create these impact frames, I will use the sketch brush. I will add a black frame before the white impact frame and a white frame before the black impact frame, which will create a flicker effect. Now this cut will show the character healing, so instead of animating blood, I'll just create a new layer and make it red and put the blend mode to multiply. Then I will create the blood and make it smaller every frame so that it looks like the character is healing. Now I think this cut is very cool, so what I'll do is I will draw his sword and the camera will pan from his hand to the top of the blade. Then I will animate the water effect and I'll make it 24 FPS so that we can have a really smooth effect. I'll lower the opacity and add the glow effect, and the glow will be a light blue color. Then I'll add the compositing. Lastly, this is the final cut. It's also gonna be pretty easy. We just need to fix the anatomy. The way I will do it is by flipping the characters and redrawing them. Now I'm gonna make the animation move a little bit. So I'm gonna move the hair and the clothes, and I'm gonna add a better shake effect. Now the water is also gonna be in 24 FPS. Finally, we can add the compositing and the particles. And we are done with the animation. Now I will show the animation before and after. The goal of this video was to show that practice is key and every mistake helps to push you forward. This is why you should challenge yourself, explore new technique, and never stop creating. Thanks for watching.